Hello there, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Samantha and this is my channel where I talk all about books. And today I'm coming to you with another recent reads video. I started doing these in June. And I enjoyed the format for a tiny bit of time. And then, you know, I'm a Capricorn, so I just couldn't deal with it. I'm actually not serious. I don't really believe in astrology that much, but it is a trait of a Capricorn that we like structure and stuff like that. And so with the recent reads, they weren't structured enough for me. And I was like, no, I like my monthly wrap-ups. So I'm going back to monthly wrap-ups starting next month. Although this is kind of a monthly wrap-up because I'm basically talking about all the books I read in August apart from one, which I mentioned in a previous recent reads video. So yeah, it's pretty much an August wrap-up, but we're calling it recent reads. Also, a few things before I actually get on to the books I want to talk about. First of all, I cut off my hair. And I have actually posted a video since cutting my hair, but I didn't address the fact that I cut my hair. So yes, if you were here before and you saw me with long hair, I mean, obviously you can see that I chopped off all of my hair. Also, we're doing work on my house right now, so that's why the background is such a mess and why you might be able to hear some banging around in the background. I apologize for that, but I needed to film this video today because I'm moving on the weekend and I will be without Wi-Fi. So yes, that is why we're powering through. Also, sorry, last little footnote before we get on. This is the first video I filmed since hitting 1,000 subscribers, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to all the new people, all the people who have been here for a while, just all of you. Thank you. And if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, smash that button. Go ahead and click the button and you get to see more of me. Normally not being such a mess. I'm just like in a very odd mood today. So I have 10 books to talk about today. I'm not that great at synopsizing books, so I will be linking the Goodreads page for all of these books down below so that you can go and read more information about them and also add them to your Goodreads shelf. And also I always put the content warnings down by the link as well. So yes, that's where you're gonna be able to find everything that you need. Anyway, really on to the books now. So the first book that I have to talk about is The Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reid. I got this book from NetGalley in exchange for a review, and this came out on the 4th of August. And this book is set in 1992 in LA, and it follows our main character Ashley, who comes from quite a wealthy family. Her friendship group has always been made up of white kids, and during this time the Rodney King riots are happening, and she just starts to kind of question her relationships with these white friends of hers and kind of where she fits in her school, because she's never really hung out with the black kids in her school. She's always been sort of not really seen as one of them. It's kind of about her trying to understand her identity a little bit more, as well as tackling race issues, class issues, and police brutality, and so many others. This was a very important read and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed her writing style. It was kind of blunt at times, but I really liked that. And then at other times it was really lyrical and beautiful. I just really enjoyed that sort of contrast. I also think that the way that Christina Hammonds Reid wrote teenagers was very realistic, especially teenagers in their last year of high school, as it dealt with sort of like changing relationships and friendships. That's something that I think everyone who's graduated high school has experienced in some capacity. I just think that she did a really great job of representing that. The last few chapters in particular were definitely like my favorite. I really enjoyed the last like maybe 20% of the book was probably the stuff that I enjoyed the most. The only issue I had with this book was the characters. I feel like they could have been developed a little bit further just for my liking, but I think that this was a fantastic debut and I'll definitely read whatever she writes next because yeah, her writing style was just top tier. I really enjoyed it. The next book I have to talk about is Ghost of the Shadow Market by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, Maureen Johnson, Kelly Link, and Robin Wasserman. This is a collection of novellas which follow Brother Zachariah as he goes to different shadow markets around the world and his interactions with other shadow hunters and downworlders in these particular shadow markets. I thought I had to read this before I read Chain of Gold, which is the first book in Cassandra Clare's new trilogy, The Last Hours. So that's why I read it, but it turns out you don't. But I wouldn't recommend reading this if you haven't read the rest of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. So The Infernal Devices, The Dark Artifices, and The Mortal Instruments. I highly recommend that you read all of those first before jumping into this one. I enjoyed it. It definitely wasn't my favorite of her short story collections. That one has to go to Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, and I don't know how necessary it was. Like, it wasn't super memorable, but I always love just reading more about the Shadowhunters and Downworlders and the characters that we know and love. My overall rating was actually a 3.95, which is very specific. Basically a 4 out of 5 stars for that one. The next thing I read, I listened to on audio, and that was More Than Enough, Claiming Space for Who You Are, No Matter What They Say by Elaine Welteroth. This is a memoir manifesto about her life. She was the editor of Teen Vogue. She's the person who kind of brought social consciousness to Teen Vogue. I don't really know very much about Teen Vogue or magazines in general. I don't know anything about any of that, but I heard Olivia from I Love You for Books talking about this on her channel, and I thought it sounded really interesting, so I decided to pick it up. And I would highly recommend this to anyone who is a career-driven person. Like, if you're looking to have a career, you should read this book. It dealt with so many really important topics like feminism, racism, what it's like to be mixed race, abusive relationships, all sorts. It covered a lot, and I would definitely recommend this book. I didn't give it a rating because I don't rate memoirs or nonfiction anymore. I feel weird rating people's memoirs because like that's someone's life. I don't feel comfortable rating it, but I will say that I really did enjoy listening to this. I listened to the audiobook, as I said. I got it from my library, and she narrates it herself, and I do think that this will be a really good book for you if you are a career-driven person. Then I think you should listen to this. And just in general, I think it was a really interesting read, and I really enjoyed learning more about sort of the magazine industry and how she got into there. And yeah, I enjoyed it. Would recommend. The next two books that I read are the fourth and fifth book in a series, so I'm not going to talk about them too much, but they were The Battle of the Labyrinth and The Last Olympian, the last two books in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. I gave both these books 4 stars. I did really enjoy them. My favorite in the series is still The Titan's Curse. I think that one was just, I don't know, that one was just the most enjoyable for me personally, and I loved seeing how that was kind of where the series started drifting more towards young adult rather than middle grade, which is what the first 2 books are. I did enjoy these ones, and I loved how fast-paced the last book was. It was action-packed from start to finish, and I really enjoyed it. I'm also really excited to start the next of Rick Riordan series, which I think is the Heroes of Olympus, is the one that you read after this. I don't know, I did look up the order, but I've forgotten. But yeah, I'm glad that I finally read this series, even though I'm 21 now and I'd never read it, but I have now. Oh, if you don't know what Percy Jackson's about, basically follows our main character Percy, and he always gets kicked out of school every year, and weird things always happen to him, and he doesn't know who his dad is. And one day he finds out that his dad is one of the Greek gods and that he is a demigod, and he goes to Camp Half-Blood and goes on all sorts of adventures with his friends Annabeth and Grover and others. And if you like Greek mythology, I don't know why you haven't read this book. The next book that I read was another nonfiction / memoir, and that was British on Race, Identity and Belonging by Afua Hirsch. As the title suggests, this book talks about racism in Britain, which if you don't know, that's where I live. So I'm trying to read more anti-racism resources that are centered on the UK, as well as still reading stuff about the US, obviously, and other parts of the world. But I do want to make sure that I'm reading stuff about the UK as well. So I picked this up from the library as well, and I listened to the audiobook. This book talks about racism in the UK and how Britain tries so hard to be like polite, and how Britain thinks that it's better to be colorblind than to see color, and how that leads to its own microaggressions. It just explores a lot of themes to do with racism in Britain, and it also talks a lot about the author's own experience with trying to work out her identity and where she belongs as a mixed race woman living in Britain. I think it was an interesting read. It did have quite a large focus on her own individual experience, which obviously it's important to read about people's real experiences. However, I did think initially that it was going to be more focused on sort of the facts, and I didn't realize it was going to be more of a memoir. It wasn't exactly what I expected it to be, but I still think that it's a really important read, especially if you live in Britain. I would highly recommend that you check this one out. The next book that I read was The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I was supposed to be reading this with Mel from The Bookish Mel. Obviously, who else would I mention in videos? We were supposed to be buddy reading this, but she actually didn't get around to it, which is absolutely fine because I didn't really enjoy this book, so it actually worked out quite well. This book is the first book in a 7-book sci-fi fantasy series. It's a really weird book, and I'm very confused even though I finished it. It's set in London in like the year 2056 or something like that. Our main character, Paige, is 19 years old, and it's basically in this world there are these people called clairvoyants, and like there's different branches of clairvoyance, and basically they use spirits somehow, and I just don't know what this book is really about, even though I finished it. But basically Paige gets taken to this other place, and then there are these weird beings who I kind of envisioned as like aliens, but like they're not really. I really don't know. But she is basically assigned to this guy called Warden, and she's like essentially a prisoner. It was just really weird, and I really don't understand what happened. I ended up giving it 2.5 because it was really slow and very confusing. I don't really know why I rated it as high as I did. Well, I guess it's because like there wasn't anything like that wrong with it. Like I kind of liked the character. No, I didn't even like the characters in the end. I might lower this to a 2 because I think 2.5 was generous. I didn't like it. I am still curious to read Priory of the Orange Tree, which is her other book, but I will not be continuing on with the Bone Season series because no thank you. The next book that I read was another one that I got for review from NetGalley, and that was Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. I 100% requested this only because of the name Hazel Hayes. If you don't know, Hazel is a YouTuber, and I used to watch her videos all the time. I haven't actually watched any of her videos in a long time, but I saw the name and I saw the pretty cover and I read the description. I thought, that sounds like something I might enjoy. Let me request that. So I did, and I got approved. This actually came out in June, but I didn't even get approved for it until like mid-July. So that's why this review is so late. This basically follows our main character who doesn't have a name, and it starts at the end of a relationship where she's packing up her ex's stuff, and it goes back in time and shows us how the relationship started to fall apart, and all the way back to like the beginning of like how it started and how it wasn't even that great when it started, sort of thing. It was an interesting narrative technique, but I don't know how well it actually worked for this story, because obviously at the beginning when they're together you're supposed to be like, oh, this is really cute, but because of what I'd already found out about them and how the relationship didn't work, I wasn't rooting for them at all. So I was just kind of like, the last few chapters of this, I just don't care. Also, the chapters are really long, which I am a big fan of short chapters, so that kind of irked me that they were very, very long. It was not bad. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed her writing style. However, it was a little bit pretentious at times, especially like with not even naming your main character. That just seems like a really odd thing to do. I don't know. What I didn't like about this book mainly was the characters. I didn't like the characters, and so I just kind of struggled to connect with them. They were both really unlikable, which is not great. What I did like about this book was that she does try and normalize therapy, which is good, because I definitely think that therapy is something that should be normalized. Like, there's so much stigma around it, and I think that's really weird, because like, why should it be? People are just trying to take care of themselves. Like, let them take care of themselves without judgment, please. It just wasn't what I was in the mood for at that point in time, but I felt like I had to read it because it came out so long ago. It only came out in June. It wasn't that long ago, but I felt like I had to read it, so I kind of forced myself to read it. And I think maybe I would have enjoyed this had I read it at a different time. I think if you like normal people, it's kind of gave me normal people vibes, but I personally preferred normal people. I think that's another problem, is that I read normal people not that long ago, and the fact that it reminded me of that one just meant that, like, I don't know, I was just kind of like, I don't care. I feel like I've read this before, even though normal people is different in many ways. It was fine, but nothing special. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. We are almost there. Next book I read was another one that I got for review, and that was Mad, Bad, and Dangerous to Know by Samira Ahmed. This follows our main character Kayam, who's spending the summer in Paris with her parents, and she's left a bit of a mess behind in Chicago because she's not over her ex yet, and also she entered this essay into an art history competition trying to find a link between Dumas and Delacroix. And Delacroix is like a famous painter, and it's Alexandre Dumas, the writer of Three Musketeers. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, she was trying to find a link between that, and basically her essay was ripped to shreds by the judges. She goes to Paris. She meets this guy who happens to be a descendant of Alexandre Dumas. Wow, what a coinky-dink. And it also has a different timeline, which is 200 years before, set in the Ottoman Empire, following Layla, who is the most favored woman in the Pasha's harem. Her position is meant to be a gift, but for her it's a curse, as she fights to keep her true love hidden from her jealous captor. It follows those 2 different women and how their stories intertwine. Yeah, that was not the best description. This book is kind of hard to describe, but it's basically just Kayam and Alexandre are just having adventures in Paris, trying to solve this mystery and connect a missing Delacroix painting to Alexandre Dumas, and how Layla ties into all of that. I was not a huge fan of this book, to be honest. I enjoyed the beginning, like the first 25%. I was like, you know, this is kind of cheesy and ridiculous, but it's fun. But then it was just so dramatic. I found Kayam to be really annoying, especially because she was so indecisive about which guy she wanted to be with, because there was a little bit of a love triangle between her ex and then this new Alexandre Dumas, the like 7th or whoever the hell he is, I don't know. Her ex-boyfriend was called Zaid. He was ridiculously annoying, and I don't even understand why he was still a love interest, because like they broke up, but she was just pining after him the whole time, so that annoyed me. And I don't think that Alexandre was a good fit for her either, and so I was just like, why is this happening? I did really enjoy the Layla plotline. However, I didn't actually enjoy like her chapters, which might sound very odd. Basically, her chapters were really short and they didn't add that much to the story. Like, they were kind of random and they didn't always go along with what was happening in the rest of the story. We found out about Layla's past in Kayam's timeline. So I think I would have preferred if like the snippets that we got from Layla's point of view had been longer, or if they just weren't there and we found out that information in Kayam's timeline. I don't know, it didn't work for me. I do think that Samira Ahmed has a very easy to read writing style, and her books are quite fun, and like this book definitely was fun. It's just the drama just got to me, and just by the end of the book I was just so over it. So I ended up giving this 2.5 out of 5 stars. It was just too dramatic for me. I do like a bit of drama sometimes, but this was just, it was over the top. And I think especially because I really didn't like Zaid, the love triangle just didn't make sense to me, because I was like, you broke up and he was not good to you and you were together, so why is this even a question? And the last book I have to talk about is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This was my favorite book that I read in this whole video. I'm excited to talk about this. I don't want to give you too much because this is a mystery thriller, which actually came out yesterday, the 3rd of September. This is a young adult mystery following our main character, Avery. And Avery does not have a lot of money. She lost her mother a few years ago, and so now she lives with her sister and her sister's abusive boyfriend. One day she's in school and she's called to the principal's office, and there's some random guy in there, and she gets told that she has inherited almost all of the money of this billionaire who has died. And yeah, he left almost all of his money to her, and she's never met him. She has no idea who he is. The only catch is that she has to go and live in his mansion for a year with all of his family who's still alive. And obviously none of them want her around because they think that she stole their inheritance. So yes, that's the basic plot. I don't want to give you any more information because it is a mystery. You're going to want to go in not knowing anything. It does say in the description that this is perfect for fans of Knives Out, so if you liked that movie, I really do think you're going to like this book. I really liked that movie and I really liked this book. It ended up giving me a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is actually my first ever Jennifer Lynn Barnes book. I know that her series The Naturals is very popular and I've been meaning to read it forever, and I will read it at some point soon because I really enjoyed this. It had me gripped from the very first page. I started at like 9:30 at night and I was like, I'm only gonna read like a few chapters just to get it started. Before I knew it, I was 30% of the way through the book and I was like, oh my god. It was such a quick read and I really just could not put it down. I was so enthralled by the story. I loved that it had like a big family dynamic. I come from a fairly big family, so I love it when a book has a big family dynamic. It's always fun to read about. And I loved how each of the brothers in the family were so different. I really do think that she did a good job of differentiating between the different brothers. It was really quick to read. It had a cliffhanger because I did not realize that this was the first book in a series until I was almost finished, and then I was like, wait, hold on, does this book have a sequel? And yes, it does. And then I was so annoyed because I was like, I'm reading this, the first one hasn't even been published yet, and I'm gonna have to wait a whole, like, at least a year for the sequel, which is sad. It's very sad to me, but it's fine. I'm just excited to get back into that story. My only slight qualm was the fact that there was kind of like the initial reveal and then there was like some more reveals later on. The first reveal was a little bit of an anticlimax for me personally. I was just like, oh, like that's a good reveal. Like I didn't see that coming, but I just thought it was gonna be something more, I don't know, something more intense than that. But this was still a really enjoyable read. I personally loved it. I'm not very well versed in the mystery genre, so that could just be me not being good at guessing things. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I will definitely be rereading it and continuing on with the series because it was so fun. But those are all the books that I have to talk to you about today. Let me know if you've read any of these books down below. I would love to know your thoughts, opinions, feelings. Let me know. I would love to know. But that's all I have for this video, so I hope you liked it. If you did, please give a thumbs up. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below. And I post videos every Friday, so I will see you next Friday. Bye!
Okay, this is so risky. Holding this cup of tea whilst getting myself settled in. I don't know why I'm gonna hold the tea. It's gonna be too hot to drink. I've made a huge mistake. Okay, we did it without spilling any tea.
Hello there, it's Samantha. Welcome. That's the wrong hand. Talk about. It's just like a plank of wood going past the window. Oh, that's not actually the first book I read. Okay. More Than Enough, claiming space for what you are, no matter, sorry, what? My only slightly anticlimactic, climactic. Oh my god, I've been talking for so long. Those are all